obviously I've gone ahead because I didn't realise the camera decided to stop filming, but I've put in here, you can see I've put in a lot darker on the eyebrows. I started defining a bit here on the outside, the finer lines of the eyebrows here as well, and then I decided to smudge it with my finger a little bit. So just lightly going over it with my finger, and then started going around the sides of the eye and pushing it around the edges. I then did the same going in through this eye. When I was going around the eye, I went with the shadow and then went around the shape of the eye like this, pushing around. From here, I'm looking to try and darken a little bit on the inside of the eye here to begin with. I'm going to darken a little bit up here just to tie in more of it, maybe. I don't know actually, now I look at it. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about that. I think I'm just going to focus on this area. Don't worry too much about what goes on at the top there. It's not really that important. It's more to do with just defining these darker areas. And now I've actually established the shadow that lies underneath these eyebrow hairs. I can now go in a bit darker with some darker hairs in more specific areas. So I'm just smudging all that dark graphite that I put in there at the top and just sort of blending it with the rest around, surrounding. Try and refrain from doing eyelashes and the like the capillaries in the eyes and things like that, because they'll really pop out. If you leave them till last, they'll really pop out when you do them, and it makes it come to life. what I'm doing now is I'm just creating like a step where the eyelid sits. I'm just creating a definite point between where the inside, that lid shelf sits, is going to be lighter than the front of the eyelid, if that makes sense. It's not going to be a stark line like I've left there like that, obviously, but it's just so that I can see that there'll be a different, ever so slightly, there'll be a different tonal value. So where that might be, say, like a 4 or a 5 on the shelf, underneath it might be a 6 or a 7. 10 being the darkest, 1 being the brightest again. So going across from that, you can see there's little dashes of white where the light is hitting the pores on my skin in between the eyelashes. So you can see that I can start using a razor to sort of rub out those tiny little marks as I go. But until I've got to the point of establishing that value there on the shelf and then that value of the shade, I don't really want to start punching in loads of lighter tones until I've got that right. Again, I'm holding it back like a normal handwriting pen. That's because I want a bit more control. I don't need to have lots of movement and lots of freedom. I want to tie it in now because I'm starting to get into more detail in my work. Another thing I like to bear in mind is there's never a hard line on anything, especially when it's a natural element like an eye. So bear in mind that there are folds and rolls as it sort of goes around areas. So, for example, this area here, the top part of my the lower part of my eyebrow, that is, it sort of folds down on top of my eyelid. And you need to bear in mind, like I was talking about the anatomy, you need to bear in mind that fold of skin, there's skin that sort of wraps underneath. And so if that's the case, it's not going to be a light tone all the way down to that line. It's going to fade away. Like if I use that masking tape again, if I'm to show you this masking tape, if this represents the light on top of my eyelid and the skin folds away underneath, can you see how this is obviously an exaggerated version, but you can see how the tonal value of where it's light to dark, it comes away. It's not a striking just light, stops. It'll go light, then start shading dark. And that's how you should achieve lines when you draw naturally. And so you want a shade to try and achieve that. So how you do that is you go from the darker areas and you try and bring it out. And then try and follow the way that the skin sort of folds around when you start rubbing it, and it should tie it in. And then what you can do is you can pick up highlights. So where some parts of the skin is a bit lighter, you can go over very lightly and just stroke over with an eraser those areas. And the eraser acts not just as an eraser, but it also acts as like a blender too. It acts a little bit like your finger in that it blends some of these values as well. Okay, and now I can go back in again with my finger and just blend those